Assalamu alaikum. Dear viewers, I welcome you to our program, a discussion with the women icons of legal fraternity, organized by Legal Voice Foundation. And I'm your host, Nadima Khan. This episode has been sponsored by Legal Apparels, and our media partner is lawyersclubbangladesh.com. Legal Voice Foundation is a non-profit, lawyer-led organization working for the general citizens with the aim of protecting the rights guaranteed in parts 2 and 3 of the Constitution of Bangladesh by raising public awareness. And as part of our Raising Public Awareness initiative, it's our pleasure to have with us today our eminent guest, Nihad Kabir ma'am. Let us welcome Nihad Kabir ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your program.
You're welcome, ma'am. We live in a patriarchal society where it has always been difficult for women to achieve success. But despite this reality, our guest has very rich professional achievements, which we would like to take the privilege to let our viewers know. Nihad Kabir ma'am is the president of Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dhaka, and an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She is the senior partner of Syed, Ishtiaq, Ahmed and Associates, a leading law firm of the country. She is an independent director on the board of Square Textiles Limited, and also a director of the financial institutions BRAC Bank Limited, Infrastructure Development Company Limited, and Bikash. Nihad Kabir ma'am chairs the boards of BRAC EPL Stock Brokerage Limited and BRAC EPL Investment Limited. And she was the Secretary General of Aino Shalish Kendro, a legal aid institution. She is a member of the Company Law Reforms Commission, Fellow of Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, BIDS, member of the Board of Governors of Bangladesh Public Administration Training Center, which is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister. And she has also been a member of the National Pay and Services Commission and the National Education Policy Committee, Government of Bangladesh. Nihad Kabir ma'am has more than 25 years of work experience as a corporate and commercial lawyer. She was called to the bar from Greece in England. She has a BA Honours degree in law, an LLM, and an MA degree, all from the University of Cambridge in England. Ma'am, I already mentioned to our viewers that you have completed BA Honours degree in law, LLM, and MA all from the University of Cambridge. Would you please tell us a bit more about your school and college life and share some memories of your time at the university?
Yes, I would be happy to do that. My schooling mostly was in Holy Cross School and College. Before that, for a few months, I was in a little school called Farmview, which was in Indira Road, very close to my house. But then the war intervened, the War of Independence. And after that, I joined Holy Cross, and I studied throughout from kindergarten to intermediate in Holy Cross. And you may know that at that time, Holy Cross was one of the preeminent schools for girls and college for girls in Bangladesh. So I had an absolutely fantastic time there. I must pay my respects to all my teachers there, because there were some values other than just the actual education, which was I think it was quite good. But they inculcated a lot of values in us. And I think the most important value which was inculcated in all of us students in Holy Cross was that you must treat every human being with respect, regardless of social or economic or any other status. Every human being must be treated with respect. So that is a lesson that I think all Holy Cross girls have carried with us throughout our lives. So after that, I went to England to do my A-levels for a year. That was a very, very hard year because, as a lot of you know, the way of instruction is very different in England to the way it was in Bangladesh. And I also went from a Bangla medium school, because Holy Cross School and college were both Bangla medium. And I had to shift to English medium. My subjects were mathematics, English literature, and economics. And I have to say that I developed an abiding dislike for economics at that time. So when my parents asked me if I wanted to study economics at university, I flatly said no. But that was a seminal change for me, learning how to learn in a different way. I remember that I once was asked in English literature, I was asked to write something about, I think it was either Hamlet or some Shakespearean play or something. So, I did what we do in Bangladesh. I quoted a lot. So-and-so has said this about that, and so-and-so has said about this about Hamlet. And, the way we do it here, you have to quote from other people to write a good essay. And I remember, I think I still have that paper. I remember my tutor wrote on it that, Nihad, I know what all these people have said. I've read them. And I've read more books. What I want to know is what you think. Now, this is something quite interesting, because for an 18-year-old girl or a young woman to be asked to say what she thinks about Shakespeare, to me it was like, how can I have an opinion on Shakespeare? I mean, Shakespeare is just... But that is how they taught, that you must build your own opinion. You must have the courage and the confidence to express your own opinion on something. So from there, I went on to Cambridge and spent 3 years doing my law, honors in law. And again, there was this similar way of teaching. When I went to Cambridge, the first lesson, our first lecture or first tutorial, we were told that they did not intend to teach us everything about the law, because they could not in 3 years. Even a lifetime study is not enough. So what they would do is they would give us the tools so that in future, when we were faced with a problem, we could identify the problem, the facts, we could identify the rules which should apply to the facts. We could analyze the facts and rules together and come to a conclusion. So that was the training they said they would give us. And that is what they did. So I did my honors, went to London, went to bar school, came back to Dhaka for a year, and then went back to do my LLM, came back, and here I have been, more or less, practicing law for the last, almost 30 years. And in between, for 3.5 years, I spent time working as legal counsel in the Asian Development Bank in Manila. So there you have my life in 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, even I have a different question. Like, even today, many families would hesitate to send their daughters abroad for studying. And back in those days, society was more conservative. So during that time, you went abroad to complete your studies. So I assume you must have received a big support from your family.
Yes, I always received tremendous support from my family. My mother herself went to study in England when she was 18 years old in the 1950s. So, the family tradition of and had her father, uncle, and all, they all went to England to study and all that. So there was a long family tradition there. But I'm going to take issue with you on the statement when you said families were more conservative there at that time, in the 80s. I actually don't think so. I think 80s was close enough after our War of Independence for us not to be conservative, for us to be adventurous, for us to be courageous, and to be very happy to look at new horizons and break through. In fact, that was the time in the middle of the 80s when a lot of my friends, for the first time, they went overseas and they found their niches and they found their places overseas. So I actually think that perhaps, conservatism of that sort did not affect me at all. Perhaps now there seems to be a bit more of this in families who have not had the experiences, the cosmopolitan or the global experiences that families like ours have had, to be more conservative about their daughters, which is very surprising. But I think I see a bit of that. I think more of that.
That's a very good message for the families, because I often heard from my friends, female friends, that they couldn't go abroad to study because their parents wouldn't let them. And we have this, saying in Bangla that BA kar por jeo. Fortunately, I never heard it, but I heard it from a lot of friends that their parents say this thing. So I hope our viewers would, those who think like this, that women shouldn't go abroad to study, to pursue their career dreams, they should reconsider their decision. Ma'am, I'll move on to my next question. You pursued a career in the legal profession during a period when not many women thought of pursuing a career as a lawyer. So what motivated you to study law? Especially now that I know you studied literature at first. So why did you study law?
No, I studied literature for A-levels, not... but, you know, I studied law because my mother told me to. Seriously. I had no particular inclination towards studying anything specific. I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't want to be a doctor or something. Left to myself, I think my choices might have been either mathematics or literature. But it was a sort of a family thing that I should study law. My mother's point was that you should be a professional. You should not be dependent on anybody for your livelihood, for your income. You should have your own standing. And law is one of perhaps the best ways of getting there. She never wanted me to be dependent on anybody. And so I read law. And I don't think I've regretted that, except when I'm sitting in the middle of the night, you know, I'm awake trying to sort out other people's problems, whereas by the grace of Allah, I don't have very many problems of my own.
Ma'am, did you face any barrier struggles when you entered the profession? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
You know, Nadima, I have been extraordinarily lucky, and I always thank Allah for that. And the support of my family has been there. I was privileged to be junior to two of the most fantastic human beings, other than being two of the greatest lawyers of the country, Syed Ishtiaq Ahmed and Mr. Mahmud, who, as you know, both were Attorneys General of Bangladesh. And I mean, they don't need any introduction to the legal fraternity of Bangladesh. And so when I joined law under their auspices, there were very few barriers. But in the Supreme Court itself, indeed, at that time, there were very few practicing women. The numbers you see now, you just did not see at that time. There were, so that did create a bit of an atmosphere where, you know, everything you did was a little bit under scrutiny. But I have grown up with a bunch of brothers and male cousins and all that. So for me, it was business as usual. I could deal with it. And one of the things I used to do, I used to play table tennis regularly with a lot of my colleagues who were slightly older than me. And they were very fond of me, treated me as a younger sister. Many of them are now honorable justices of the Supreme Court, and they still fondly remember our table tennis games. Many of them are fairly senior lawyers. So that was a way of breaking the barrier. There were literally there were a handful of us. There were physical problems, which I think have been sorted out a bit. There were no separate bathrooms for women, so you spent the whole day in court. It was uncomfortable. There were no places where you could comfortably sit and eat instead of your room and things like that. But somebody like me, I was subjected to harassment by one or two young lawyers. At one point, somebody was really stalking me. And when I complained about this, I have to tell you, Barrister Rafiqul, he said to me, so after he said this to me, the next time this fellow accosted me in the corridors of the court, I actually took off my shoes and chased him all around the veranda. Much to the surprise of the people who were there. But it just shows, you know, even if somebody like me, who was under the guardianship of these very senior lawyers and all, if I could be harassed, I can imagine what a lot of other young women go through. But all I can say to them is turn around, face your bully, and face them down. They have no business doing what they're doing. And you have no reason to be embarrassed or upset about it. Tell them to literally get lost.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the amazing message. Ma'am, tell us about your initial days at Syed, Ishtiaq, Ahmed and Associates and some of the cherished memories you have of those days.
Well, let me tell you something. Barrister Ishtiaq Ahmed and Mr. Mahmud Islam, they were extremely kind gentlemen. They were gentlemen, absolutely, first and foremost. But they were very, very particular about work. If they gave you work, they expected you to do it seriously, and they expected you to do it to a high standard. They did not expect to have to actually make corrections to your work. You know, you couldn't just hand them over a piece of paper, something you had drafted. Senior that was not acceptable. But they took the time and the trouble, if you went to them, to explain to you the principles of law and also the surrounding facts and circumstances of the economy or the society in which we work. Because law does not work in a vacuum. I see today a lot of young lawyers just reading the legal law books. Your clients don't work in a vacuum. Your clients work in the society, in the economy which is around you. So unless you know about that, you will not be able to give them good practical advice. You may be able to give them excellent academic advice, which is not going to be helpful to them at all. So that is one of the main things they taught us. Another very interesting thing, a tradition which we carry on, Ishtiaq sir did not like to eat by himself. So until and unless his juniors came back to the office from wherever we were in court or whatever, he would not have lunch. So that tradition has carried on till today. In our chambers, lunch is served for all our juniors and all our colleagues. So that was a very that is a tradition that I and my partners we intend to keep alive for as long as we can. Mahmud Islam sir was he was extremely gentle, but as I said, he was very, very particular about the quality of work. And I have to say that as far as drafting was concerned, both of them were superb. I learned from the very, very best in that. And I have no hesitation in saying that.
Ma'am, as a women leader, what were the challenges that you faced in a society that is predominantly male-dominated?
Okay, can I turn your question around? I'm not a woman leader. I have been put in a place of leadership where, among a lot of men, I'm a woman. Yeah, so if you want to call me a leader, then I'm a leader who is a woman. I chair now the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is established in 1904. So it's 116 years old now. And in 116 years old, I'm only the third woman president.
And you have been elected for the fourth time this year.
I've been elected for the fourth time, and it's very kind of my colleagues to have reposed that sort of confidence in me. And post-independence, it is a record, and I think it's a record in MCCI for somebody to have been elected 4 times in a row. So I often laugh at my friends and say, just because you couldn't get anybody else to do the job, you've elected me again. It is certainly a challenge, but it is not so much a challenge because most of my colleagues are men. It has been more of a challenge because most of my colleagues are much older than me. And they're much, much more eminent business people than me. And I have grown up seeing them as friends of my parents. And I have to say that they're extremely kind and professional in as much as when I interact with them as the president of the chamber, they interact with me in that same way and give me the due respect that any president of the chamber would get. When I deal with outsiders, people outside the chamber, when I deal with members of the government, be it the political government or the civil service, they all also grant me that courtesy, for which I'm grateful to them. And as I've told you, you know, for some reason, by the grace of Allah, I've really not faced a lot of problems. It just is something like that. I mean, everybody asks me this question: what barriers have you faced? And when I tell them that, to be very honest, I have not, and they're all very surprised. But I have not, and I'm very grateful for that.
Now I'll ask you a different question, like about your hobbies and all. Who is your favorite author? Like, I know that you read a lot of books. That's what I author.
So,
yeah.
Difficult to say, but Rabindranath, of course. I think Rabindranath has shaped, his writings have shaped a lot of my thoughts and philosophies in life. In Bangla literature, Rabindranath, Sharat Chandra, Bankim Chandra, Ashapurna Devi, the older schools of writers. In English literature, well, one had to read Shakespeare, even in school. So that's all. But Kazuo Ishiguro is a very favorite writer of mine. I don't know if you've read Remains of the Day, one of his very famous books, had a film. If you haven't, I suggest you read it. It's an absolutely stunning piece of literature.
Ma'am, we heard that photography is your hobby. Since when did you develop an interest in photography?
My father used to be very interested in photography. And when I was a child, he used to have those wonderful little cameras, Rolleiflex and Asahi and, things like that. So he had a Polaroid camera, so I used to tinker around with them. Then I used to go to the Shangbad office, our newspaper office, with him on weekends, where the great photographers of that time, they were involved with Shangbad. Rashid Talukdar Jata, then Mr. Alam, who died later. They taught me the original black and white photography and how to develop in a dark room and how to do positives and negatives and all that. So that was when I was 9, 10 years old. Then when I went to university, I carried on taking photographs, but those were holiday photographs. These are not serious photographs. For the last 2 years, there's one interesting thing I've been doing, which is I had to spend about a month or so at home. Our home in Indira Road has a very large garden, as does the house next to ours. And there's a pond also in the house next to ours. So these two houses are two of the very old style houses left in Dhaka. And there are a lot of trees. And because of the pond, so I sat down and one day somebody came, I just saw a kingfisher, caught a fish, and it was eating it. So I rushed off and got my old cameras out. I hadn't taken pictures for quite some time till then. So my husband was a great photographer. He was really a fantastic photographer, and he had died about a year and a half before the time I'm talking to you about. So I hadn't taken any pictures and things like that. So I rushed off, got my camera, took a picture, which was a really bad out of focus picture and all that, but I still put it on Facebook. And a great photographer of Bangladesh, Ihtiam Kabir, Shomi Bhai, he saw the photograph and he called me and said, Nihad, that's a stork-billed kingfisher. It's the largest kingfisher in Bangladesh. He said, I don't have a picture of this bird in my collection. Can I come and take a picture? I said, of course, please come. And Shomi Bhai actually put me on this trail. And since then, you're not going to believe this, Nadima, in these two houses in the middle of Dhaka, Indira Road near Farmgate, such a busy place. In these two houses, I have taken photographs of 36 different species of birds. I mean, I have lived in this house for more than 50 years, and I never knew that there were so many different kinds of birds in these two houses. So that has become a bit of a hobby of mine. So when I go anywhere now, I take these pictures of birds, and it really, really gives me great joy. This evening, I went out for a quick walk in the garden, and there was a purple-rumped sunbird, what we call Moutushi, Beguni Moutushi. It's also got another name called Niltuni. I have a lot of pictures, but he was flitting around, so I took some photographs, and that's something that really makes me happy.
I actually never knew that we have kingfishers in Dhaka, so I was really amazed.
In a house and pond, there are 3 different kinds of kingfishers who come in there.
Ma'am, which woman or women inspires you and why?
That is a very open-ended question, isn't it? Well, the one woman who has inspired me is, of course, my mother. My mother is a botanist. She read botany in the University of Durham in the 1950s, as I mentioned. And when she came to Dhaka, you probably know that our family business is of tea, growing tea plantations. So after the War of Independence, during the War of Independence, my father was imprisoned by the Pakistan Army. So at that time, my mother had to take over running the plantations in the States, and she still does that at her age. She still runs the estates, and she's a doyen of the tea industry. She has many firsts to her name. She was the first woman president of the Bangladesh Tea Planters Association, the Bangladesh Employers Association, which is now the Bangladesh Employers Federation, and she was actually also the first woman president of the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I have learned a lot from her, how to work, how to be disciplined, except that she still thinks I'm a very disciplined and lazy little girl. The habit of reading I got from her. But, you know, worldwide, there are many, many, many women who inspire me. But the ones who inspire me most are the women in our country who I see every day, who take care of their children, who look after their family, working very, very hard, giving up a lot of their comforts, giving up the company of their families, and with very little money. Those really are the women who inspire me every day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure women would be very much motivated and happy to hear this message. Ma'am, to us, you're a female icon. So, as a female icon, how would you define women empowerment and why is it important?
I'm absolutely shocked to hear that you consider me to be an icon. There
No,
are
I'm sure
much more iconic women in the world now. But that shock sort of led me to not quite hear your question. What was it? What were you asking?
How would you define women empowerment and why is it important?
You know, there are many, many different aspects to women empowerment. In the context of Bangladesh, economic and social empowerment has gone hand in hand from the 80s, we have found. And both these are important. Empowerment is, it is not something that you can be given. It is something you need to feel. Even a person with access to a lot of money may not be empowered. They may not have the right to make crucial decisions or choices about the way they wish to live their life. But certainly economic empowerment helps very much in getting to that stage where you can make choices. But I think much more important is social empowerment. It is a matter of the mindset, not only of the women, but also of the men in society. I'll give you an example. You see, language matters. In Bangladesh, we still say "Meer biye dicchi, cheler biye korachi." Yeah, women are still to be given away. So I always say that language matters because language shows you what the mindset is like. And the mindset of men and women have to change together. I was saying a few months ago in another program like this, actually on Women's Day, that I actually feel a little bit, I feel sorry for the young men in our generation, in our country. They have grown up seeing their grandmothers, their mothers, their sisters being treated in a particular way, where the boys and the men have been given all advantages and privileges. And suddenly we have turned around and told them that, look, we are entitled to the same privileges, we are entitled to the same benefits, and you don't get to be special all by yourself. You know, they also need help to get used to that new normal. And I don't think enough attention is paid to that aspect either. But at the end of the day, It is a question of mindset, it is a question of changing the social norms, and it is a question of your own inner strength in demanding, not necessarily just screaming and shouting about it, but in going about and getting the right to make your own choices and decisions for yourself.
Absolutely. What do you think, ma'am, is the most significant barrier to empowering women, especially in Bangladesh?
I think today, again, as I said, both social and economic. But because of the economic situation, because at least in the urban middle classes, and it has been the case in the industries where, like in agriculture and all, where women do have work all their lives, it is a question of recognizing that what they do is work, and what they do is valuable work. I think we don't recognize that. In the urban middle classes, now dual income families are the norm. So that financial barrier, slowly, that is being eroded. But the social barrier is still there. A man is not a man unless he gets to have the last say. That mental attitude needs to change.
Ma'am, in your opinion, how can we empower women? And you already said that men also need to play an active part. So how can men play an active role in empowering women?
But men do play an active role in empowering women already. Yeah. I'm sure that your father has played a great role in empowering you. He has not stopped you from studying. He has not stopped you from becoming a lawyer. He's, in fact, you've probably followed his footsteps in becoming a lawyer, and I hope you will be as good a lawyer as he is, and as good a human rights defender as he is. You know, he is our human rights, literally our human rights guru for a whole generation of us. And if I saw you glancing there, if he's sitting there and listening to that, I hope, he thinks that I'm serious about it. But no, it will start, it will have to start in the families. In institutions, we are trying, those of us who are women, we are trying in the institutions where we are to insist that more women are, first of all, employed, and secondly, given roles and responsibilities which are commensurate with their abilities. In society, a lot of the social institutions, the NGOs and all are working very hard. Again, I think basically to change the mindset. And for all of you who are young women, who are in women professionals, mentor other women, bring them in. The mental barriers they have, work on that to remove those. And then you will be doing what you want to do. I mean, when I was, as I said, when I was started as a lawyer, there were 3 of us, literally, who used to go to court regularly, and a few others, maybe a dozen. Tell me today how many lawyers there are in the Supreme Court. You set an example. You break the path, others will follow you.
I absolutely agree, and I personally feel that it's we are really fortunate to have men in our family who are not of the mindset that women can't do this, or women only have to do household works. They're broad-minded, and I personally feel that whatever I could do till now, it's because of my father, because he always pushed me, he always motivated me, and I sort of unfortunately grew up with a lot of women who wouldn't be allowed by their families to do a lot of things which I had the freedom to do. So yeah, I think that makes women like us really lucky, and I hope that more men play, especially the fathers, play an active role in empowering the women and make their daughters strong. Ma'am, I'll move on to the next question. The Constitution of Bangladesh recognizes equal rights for both men and women. And over the years, Bangladesh has implemented strong legal and policy framework that guarantees women their rights. But how far do you think we have succeeded in achieving gender equality in Bangladesh?
Difficult question. To be very honest, I mean, if you look at the facts and figures, in this region, Bangladesh has greater gender equality than I think any other country. I think we have seen that in the statistics which come out of the various UN agencies and other agencies. But even that doesn't necessarily mean a lot. I think what happens is that sometimes our religious personal laws are interpreted in a way to deny women certain rights, which are their inalienable rights, personal rights, rights in marriage, rights to property. Those are areas in which we need to work much harder. I think one area in which our policymakers can work much more, because our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, is a woman, our leader of the opposition is a woman, our Speaker is a woman. We take great pride in that, but we need to see many more women down the line who in the political sphere, because that is where they will make a difference. That is where they will make a difference in policy making in Bangladesh. I remember when the Honorable Speaker currently, when she was the Minister for Women's Affairs, State Minister for Women's Affairs, and she started drafting the Nari Niti. There was a huge ruckus and a protest about it. But with the support of the Honorable Prime Minister, they went through with it. But the thing is that policies are one thing, implementation is another thing. You will see, though, that in the civil service now and in the police, there are very large numbers of women coming up. In another few years, you will see a critical mass, and they will make the changes in their services. You will see, unfortunately, for example, in the banking industry, there aren't that many women at the top. But again, a lot of women are going into industry. And as they grow senior, in the next 10, 15 years, they will reach a critical mass where they will make a difference. We just want to expedite that. We want to expedite that process.
Ma'am, as an active member of the legal fraternity and as a prominent lawyer, tell us about the position of women in the legal system.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Nadima. Are you talking about the position of women in the profession? Or?
Yeah, in the legal profession.
I was asked this question by one of the legal magazines a few months ago. So I actually went around asking my juniors how they felt about it. In general, if you in a profession, you're as good as you are. If you're a good lawyer, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. But in chamber practice, certain ways that we have of practicing now, that after court you have to go and spend a lot of time there, and unless you're sitting in front of the senior's face, you may not get the better brief. There's still, I think, a tendency to say that why give the women will not be able to handle a more complicated brief. I think that mindset is still there in some cases, but I think that mindset is changing. And I think you will find that this post-COVID, because of the changes in work practices, this difference is going to go away. But at the end of the day, you are going to have to be a good lawyer. And unless you're a good lawyer, complaining about discrimination is not going to get you anywhere.
Not true, absolutely. Ma'am, what advice would you give to the women who are thinking of pursuing a career in the legal field?
I'll tell them to run away as fast as possible and not going to law. It's a very demanding profession. Of all professions, law is the sort of a profession where you get as much out of it, you get only as much out of it as you put in it. It's not something that I'm an advocate, I'm a barrister, great, fine. That's all right. For a year or two, you feel nice and proud, and But you very soon realize that just passing the degree does not make you a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Years and years of hard work, which leads you to a position where you are confident that you are giving the person you're giving advice to is being benefited by that advice. You have to understand that a person's life, liberty, his property depends on the advice you give, or hers, as the case may be. And you have to be serious about it. So whoever wishes to be a lawyer, don't think of very early success. Be prepared for the long haul. Don't think that you will become something great in a year or two. Those who try to do that do not succeed. That has been my absolute experience over 30 years. You have to be prepared to work hard. You have to be prepared to take the good with the bad, the hard knocks. You have to be able to take the losses in cases and get up and move on. You will think that your case was the right, your argument was the best argument, and how could you have lost a particular case? Well, you have to get up, move that out of your mind, and carry on. Unless you're prepared to do that, and unless at the same time you're prepared to battle whatever barriers you face at home, then it is a difficult profession. It really, really, really is a challenging profession if you want to be good at it.
Thank you so much. I'm sure this message will motivate those who are thinking of pursuing a career as a lawyer. We are almost at the end of our program, and I have one last question for you. Currently, we are under a lockdown due to the ongoing pandemic of COVID-19, and it's very sad and appealing that there has been a significant rise in the number of domestic violence cases in Bangladesh and also worldwide. How do you feel about it? And what message would you like to deliver to these women who are suffering in their homes in silence, where they are supposed to feel safe?
It's a very difficult situation. We've been talking about it, but because of the situation now, where although officially there is not a lockdown, say even in a place like Dhaka and various places in Bangladesh, unofficially there is. And when people are stuck together in small places for a long time, the stresses can be unbelievable. But what I would still like to say is that anybody, women, children who are being faced with this, please get in touch with organizations who deal with it. They will take you to a safe place. And once this is over, you can sort out your interfamilial issues and all that, and perhaps come to a conclusion. Otherwise, these institutions will help you. There are a lot of institutions, and they're still out there with the help. And Nadima, I think through your programs and through your outreach, you can make the contact details of all these institutions available. It is a very, very difficult position to be in for those who are in these positions. And I don't know what to say to them except that please have the courage to reach out. And if necessary, walk out. Somebody will take care of you, or you will be able to take care of yourself. It's much better than being in that position.
Absolutely. This is what I tell my friends who are suffering domestic violence. I give them the same message. And I would like to tell our viewers that if any one of you is going through some sort of domestic violence or situation that you shouldn't be facing, as ma'am said, that you should walk out, then you can feel free to message Legal Voice Foundation or me, and you can get in touch with several organizations. I know that they have this helpline. I don't know the number, but I know that organizations like Kendu and Blast, they have their helpline still active, and so you can call them and seek help.
And you can also go to the police.
Yeah, you can also go to the police. Ma'am, we are at the end of our program. Now I would like to read out the comments of our viewers. So if I can...
There's a very large number of women coming up.
We have a message from Anik Bhaiya. Okay. that's gone. Sorry, I couldn't read it. We
No,
have a
yeah.
Advocate Shakla Nimun, he has a question actually. Which identity do you prefer most, business leader or lawyer?
Lawyer, any day.
Can we move on to the next? Advocate Zohir Islam Khan.
That's a very biased comment from my guru, Advocate Zohir Islam Khan. So I'm very privileged and honored that he has made this comment about it.
He also added that she's a wonderful friend and very popular for her hospitality.
As I said, he's very biased towards me.
Okay, so waiting for the next comment or the question. Abra Ahmed Chaudhary Shakil, lawyer must be emotionally intelligent. Okay.
Yes, Abrar is actually right. A lawyer must be able to an extent gauge the state of emotions of his client also, and how best to deal with that. Abrar is right. Correct.
Okay. Salim Samad Chacha, very good discussion. Please keep up the discussion in future. Best wishes to Buddha. Thank you, Chacha. Can we have Onik Bhai's comment again? And Legal Voice Foundation, okay, they thanked you for joining us. Can we have Onik Bhai's comment again, because I couldn't read it out? Good to see Nihad.
And good to see Onik too.
Ma'am, it has been an absolute honor for us to have you with us today. We got to know about your eventful professional life, and we are sure, like me personally, there are women viewers who would be inspired by today's program. And Legal Voice Foundation seeks your continuous blessings and support for the work we do. Do you have any message for our viewers, especially women? I know you already delivered a lot of message, but one last message for everyone, all the viewers.
Thank you very much indeed. First of all, I must thank Legal Voice Foundation for having me on the program. My message is for all the viewers, and particularly the women: have a dream. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't do whatever it is that you want to do. Pursue your dream, and you will get there one day or the other. Don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. Okay? Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, ma'am, we had a technical problem.
That's right, you're back.
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, we had a technical problem. So, could you tell us the message once again?
The message is simple. Have a dream, work towards the dream, work towards your goal, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me on your program.
Thank you once again for giving us your valuable time. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay well. Assalamu alaikum.